And good evening, everyone. Tonight we have another TROM-Cast. Today's topic is language, and yeah, probably Tio, as you are expert linguist, you can start and tell your thoughts on it. Yeah. That's strange. I've got all the sound on.
Yeah, I am too.
Is it working now?
So it's working now. I can check myself.
Somebody have to speak and then check YouTube if it's the sound going through.
It doesn't work. Okay, so it doesn't work for me. The sound doesn't work for me.
So there's no screen and there's no sound from you.
It's from me, I think. I will turn it off and I will get back to you. You just continue, because.
Okay, but are we live? Yeah, and everything is going right. Can you check, guys?
Okay, let's see. Let's see if
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm seeing the stream. Yeah, it's looking good.
Okay. Oh, okay, I can start all over. Okay, yeah, we use GT, so it depends on the GT service in terms of video and audio quality. But if my sound is okay now, I can start to say a few words about the language topic. So, okay. Just before I start, let me make sure my sound works, so I don't just. Okay, it's working perfect. Okay, so let's just start. So the topic is language, and we have a book about language. It's a huge book. It took me around 1 year to finish it. And because it's such a big topic, maybe we can split it into streams. And in today's stream, we want to talk about. Let's start with kind of the beginning. What language is, after all, and what are all of these signs that we say is writing, or the voices that we use to express stuff. Because it's a very when I wrote the book, it was quite mind-blowing, because you get to learn some stuff that you may think, oh, language is interesting, but maybe it's not that, doesn't affect your life much if you know a lot about language. But in truth is that it completely changed the way that I see things, because now I understand how language works and how we express ourselves. So maybe I can open discussion by saying a few things about the beginning. I divided the subject in the book by the beginning, how it all started, the forces that are shaping language, okay, the problems that are created with the language, and 3 more chapters, the context, because language is all about context, and you'll see it's very interesting, the new languages that want to replace our old language system, and beyond language, like we can invent, we can communicate with each other in different ways than just this kind of speaking or writing and so forth. Okay, so yeah, I'm not even sure, it's such a big topic. I'm not even sure how to properly start this, but so when I started, so that I don't only talk like give others the opportunity to speak here, because when I started, I was like, where I should start, and I started with the writing. I said, okay, most people use writing, so how was writing invented? Basically, was writing from the caves, that you see those paintings, was that language, was that not language? And what I realized is that basically people, this is the very short history in like one sentence. People made sounds, and they associated sounds with ideas, or say the sun or a cave or something. And because they associated with a thing, then they made a representation, a drawing of that thing. And then they associated the sound that they made with the sign. Okay, so this is how language evolved, like the writing language, which is very interesting, because then it evolved into, instead of putting a sign for a cave, they started to map their sounds. If you said cave, they mapped k, the first kind of sound, with a sign, and the other sound like cave with another sign. So cave, instead of being one sign, it became two signs or three signs. So this kind of evolves into what we have today, and is spread around the world. Right now, most of us use this system of representing sounds made by mouths with signs, and others use sounds made for ideas, like Chinese, for example. For ideas, they represent with a sign. So in Chinese, maybe a dog is represented with a sign for a dog. In most other languages, is like DOG, like letters for the sounds that we make. So that's basically the two kinds of writing systems. And now anyone can come and comment. What do you think about this kind of whatever? What do you have to add?
Anyone? Yeah, I'm just thinking about how it become complex and how many languages we have today. It's around 5,000 or so languages, but there are only like 20 of like really popular languages.
200 written.
So 200 written, but I wanted to tell like about 20 of languages which are super popular, but majority of people are speaking, like English and Spanish and Russian, German, and others, Chinese, Hindu languages. And most of the languages they're kind of becoming obsolete, right? Because either they're stayed in some local groups for people which are like really live in a closed environment, and they're basically the last people who speaking this language. Or either more and more people just learning different languages like English, let's say. Yeah, it's become quite international language, especially in computer era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, if anyone wants to add anything.
I would like to say that this. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That this is a very complex topic for me, and I think in general people think the same. And when you say about the force of what motivate or move the creation of language, I would say that because we have the need to exchange information about uh, events. I think that you know the first humans who have um, who were biological, uh, how do you say, who emit sounds, they will try to react or events that are occurring. For example, you heard, no, it's or some reactions that for example, danger or something like that. When they see an animal that is where can attack them or is going to attack them. So in that sense, I think that the need of exchanging information, and it was maybe the primal force. I mean, we have some needs, and with collaborating or not with each other, we manage to pursue, for example, food or shelter or companionship or whatever they needed at the beginning. I would say so. Um, I would say that is the environment that forced the need of having a tool of exchanging uh, the information, meaning what events they were being part of.
And I think Fresco always talked about how you use language in order to influence another person's behavior. So
Yes, because I think that as we evolve, meaning we could live in larger groups, one tool that made that possible was language, and the capability of representing things that were not real and that we could imagine with, as Theo said, first we associate, for example, one sound to one thing that is objective, like the sun, meaning that everyone with sight could see the sun when it's giving light to that part of the earth, and then they could, I don't know exactly how, no, but I really like the point also of Yuval Noah Harari of this capability of imagination that make us possible to make great groups, no, or act in large number as a main difference of other animals.
yeah, and
So
you
yeah,
need
language. Exactly, language is. I also say that it has been a tool for controlling behavior, and the first time I heard that, it was, I think, from Fresco, but I also read from others that, and I found it very interesting because of what we are talking. So I'm going to stop talking and talking too much.
No, definitely language is a tool not only to influence other people's behavior, but to, in a way, to create a history and to create a map of the world, because you can represent with, you can transmit knowledge not only from directly, but indirectly. That's why the written language is so important, because you can write a bunch of stuff and you can create like tablets that they had thousands of years ago, and they can transmit that knowledge even after their death. So maybe some cultures died, but they left behind their voices, their ideas. And that's very important to transmit that and to map the world. So it's very complicated to say exactly what language is, because language is also facial expressions, is
Yeah.
also this our senses, it's the tone of our voice and so forth. But we'll go more into those like later on. Like now I was curious, like the beginning, why this beginning of writing language is so important is because it was a way to set in stone, almost literally, the ideas of the past, you know. So that's very important, because that's why we are here, because we could transmit knowledge so fast and so much knowledge, you know, instead of relying on the elders to teach the younger people stuff. You know, now we can have the knowledge of ancient civilizations, and more importantly, today we have knowledge from all around the world in so many different languages.
That capability was labeled I think was labeled as time binding. The quality of, because it's like traveling in through time when we can, as you said, know from ancient Egypt, because of we leave some language tool, whatever, to pass that information so it can pass time. You know what I try to say by that? I mean, we can learn a lot from experience of others that are compressed in just a few words, and you don't have to pass all that time having those experiences because they are expressing. So, it's like um, you can learn to not touch fire, but if you understand about or see others, I don't know how to express this idea, but it's the thing that ideas evolve more rapidly than biology, because we are more or less the same kind of humans, biology speaking, but instead we have technologically evolved a lot, and that is the point of what I would say about what I understand about time binding and with the language and information and communication.
Yeah, we can pass on a lot of information from the past and from around the world. Yeah.
And what is interesting to know is that this obsession, but a good obsession to map sounds basically and ideas with signs, today has transformed into a kind of religion, because so many grammatical rules everywhere. And I remember when I was in school, I was in Romania and we learned the Romanian language, and I learned 12 years. Like no subject I learned so much, like 12 years. And they repeated the same kind of bullshit all over again. Like in Romania we have, and I will ask you to give some example if you have examples from your own language. In Romania, for example, we have genders, something that is so difficult to explain to other people. Like a table is feminine, a gun could be masculine, a knife could be neutral. It's completely random, and because people focus on such things, they miss the point of language and the efficiency of language. And what do you have in your languages that is so crazy?
That's French for us too, is that there's a male and female everything, which I thought was, when I was learning that in school, is like, what? Like, what is this? Why would you do it this way? It's like a concept you're trying to anthropomorphize language, which is interesting to me. But yeah, the kind of learning the same things, like I know English is the hardest language to learn, and there certainly is like just almost every day there's like some new word or new way to use an old word or new meaning, and then like texting and shorthand, kind of evolving our language and pushing it in that direction. But that school is teaching you like we're learning like Shakespeare and like ways like you don't talk like doth thus drink out of the goblet. Like we don't speak like that. Why am I don't understand the relevance to like now how that's good for me to be spending entire years just reading and learning about what a great writer Shakespeare was. Like to me that's not learning a language. It's like a career course, like a biography on somebody or something. Not useful.
I think with English it's funny too that there's so many rules and that they're different in America, what North America uses, and what UK and Australia and everything.
And Canada, yeah, and the different spellings, like color and color. We have a U and R's and favorite. Like there's it's like
there's a lot. Yeah.
We could simplify English.
Yeah.
I think.
And it's.
Go ahead. Okay, sir. Yeah, I think what's funny is that many people take this languages so seriously, like become obsessed with it religiously. If you made a mistake somewhere, like some small
grammar.
grammatical mistake. Yeah, people will just ignore all the point and start, to point out it's like it's written like that and consider you dumb for no reason. Even if you write, let's say on foreign language, yeah. So how many here of us are English speaker? Only you, Cody, right? So for all the rest of us, it's foreign language. We know some words and we can try to build sentences, and of course it's imperfect.
Very impressive.
Yeah. You see. And yeah, what I found funny is really that people take it so seriously. Just some small grammatical mistakes, or even not grammatical. Even if you say some word differently, you just upgrade the word, but everyone get your idea, and still they will point out, oh, you cannot start sentences like that, or you cannot use this word or that word. And yeah, why? I mean, the point of communication is to bring the point or share the ideas, not to think about the grammar and how to express yourself in a right way.
Right. And it's like they're correcting you to what you should have said, so they know exactly what you were trying to say in the first place. What are you doing here? Like, you're just wasting both our times. And if you're texting or something, it's like there's barely a full word in there now with how much shorthand there is, and just it's like you're cutting out all this stuff purposely because it's wasteful now. And it's like, we understand that BTW is by the way, and like this kind of thing. It's like, don't correcting on that silly stuff. It's like, just like you're trying to create conflict for whatever reason, and like address be superior to me, and I know this about the grammar, and now I'm trying to teach you, and this is the way it should be. I actually have a friend like that.
Yes, in Spain, it's been like nuts for a lot of years, because here we had a dictatorship, and many areas of Spain, as the language explains, speak different dialects. So in this moment, when people were addressed by policemen or officials, if they couldn't speak Spanish properly, they will send to jail. So, in fact, I don't know how to say, my grandmother, his father was sent to jail because of that, because he couldn't speak Spanish. He speak the dialect because he just lives in that small environment, and I think that people raised in that environment, they were like sort of different approaches, because it's like, okay, if you don't write well, you can have trouble. But then after the dictatorship, it became like also like a team, and you are saying like a religion, meaning that people had like a sense of justice, meaning that when they see something that they like, they kind of give a prize. But if they see something that they don't like a word express, or word bad spelling, or something that is not correct, they punish, they devaluate that person. And I have difficulty now understanding more human behavior and the importance of environment, when some make some jokes of people having trouble on expressing themselves or ideas. And yeah, but you see, for example, depending on the culture, it's been a very tough issue. So now it's quite relaxed, but speaking about freedom of speech. But we have a rapper in jail because he was saying some things about the government. I don't know exactly the case, but I know that's for real. So
yeah, imagine how many problems and what separation these languages have in today's society. So there are so many countries where people are divided, although they might have the same mentality because they live in the same area. and they have information from the same sources, and everything around is the same. Yet they might speak different languages. Like, for example, for me, I was born in Latvia, but my first language is Russian. And let's say if you are Russian in Latvia, you still have less opportunities. Let's say if you want to go into politics, it's not really easy for there. You won't be accepted, even though you may speak only Latvian. Everyone knows that you're kind of your first language Russian and so on. And society kind of divided on two parts. There's part Russians, there's part Latvians, and they kind of try to live together, but there are many, many conflicts. And for example, my wife, she's Latvian, and her first language is Latvian. And we met together in London. And at that time, I couldn't speak properly Latvian. I understood, but my speaking wasn't so good. And for her was other way around. She understood some Russian, but no, understood Russian, but she couldn't speak well. So we just started to speak on two languages, which each other. I was speaking to Russian, and she answered me in Latvian, and we're totally fine. We're living like that for 10 years, and I don't have this already in my head that we are speaking two different languages. That's also interesting.
Just to add to a little bit to the thing, that the Nazi grammar thing, because I think it's interesting to point out. If you look at the grammar, and I started to look at the grammar from Romanian to English, from Korean to Chinese, from whatever languages, and everything, it's a complete mess. They think, they teach you in school that, oh, you have this rule in English to put s at the end of a word to make it plural. Bullshit. So many words are not like that. They are exceptions. All languages are full of exceptions to the point of having no rule. Actually, it's no point in those grammatical rules. And of course, this is a natural course of language. You cannot have a fixed language like that. The way that people pronounce some words, they will change the way that those words will be written, or the meaning of those words. But you see, you have those guardians that want to keep things as they are, and they make books in school, and they make a business out of it. And if you change, if you say to them, language is flexible, leave it however it is, you destroy them. You destroy this entire, even in industry, if you think about it, they cannot keep with that. They have to teach you old rules in terms of grammar.
And the interesting things why there are some rules and why this word is wrong or this is right is because some people decided so. There's no like any procedure or evaluation. Yeah, it's like, okay, I think to put s at the end of this word is correct. So
it's actually
now it's the rules, so we'll follow them. Yeah.
The S was with the Vikings. I think they conquered some, like, England or a part of England, and they didn't speak English, so they forced everyone there who didn't speak their language to put an S at the end of plural words. So that's how they basically forced the S with a sword.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Ridiculous it is.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not really a reason for this to be so important, but it is in our culture. And to the point that, like, I mean, basically most of what lawyers do, I'm pretty sure, is is correct things with language. And a lot of, for example, international agreements. I mean, I've talked to some people that, some of my people I went to university, for example, are involved, in their international lawyers, things like that. And they tell me that they spend most of their time just correcting little things with language here and there, and like just doing basically nothing. I don't know. When you spend so much time just on language.
Yes, because I find that they are experts in how to interpret those words in the sense they want to. So I'm related about that because I've studied law, and every comma was meaningful. So, but that's why, I mean, that has a reason, no? Because as Dima says, some invented that language, and when you fix that structure, I think it's because it's serving some interest of some kind, and it doesn't allow, or how do you say, you can trick when you have a fixed norm about how to introduce facts or stuff like that. It's very tricky situation. They live about it's the way they live, you know, about interpreting language. So the main reason is because it's very subjective and interpretable. How would you say?
Yeah.
And then again, why they use so complex language? So if you take some of these papers, you know, agreement of any kind, you barely could understand anything until you read it 10 times with a
That's the
dictionary.
point.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
need a lawyer
Yeah.
to understand it.
Yeah, exactly. So they use language for their own advantage. It's not for advantage of people or to sharing information. It's just, you know, to have something in
Lawyers are
return.
the hackers of language.
Yeah.
They know how to hack it in their own interest.
Yeah.
Some people try to play their game, you know, learning their language and trying to fight back, but I think it's pointless from my experience, and I don't. That's why I didn't become a lawyer yet. I don't know if ever I would have the need for, but you know, it's not. What I find interesting to do. I prefer to, you know, maybe it's not the big solution, but trying to create a more or less subjective languages for some instance could be very helpful when we try to at least put ideas in common or build something together.
We will reach that point because I addressed that, and actually you cannot make a less subjective language, but I will explain that. What I
Yeah.
wanted to say is that first, because now we are talking a bit about the structure of the language today, I want to say that you realize the nonsense of your own language when you analyze the grammar of another language. Because, you know, I'm told in school that, oh, you have to make all of the sentence be feminine because you talk about a table. But in Chinese, they say you don't even have to use many words. In Chinese, they say two horse tomorrow. And I can hear myself. Um, so you who join, can you please turn off your microphone? And if you ever want to say something, please do so. So I was saying that in Chinese they have something like two horse tomorrow, like two horse come tomorrow, something like that. They don't have to put like the verb for tomorrow. They don't have to put the horses for plural. They don't have to put all of this nonsense. You know, they put other kinds of nonsense, but they don't have to put that in. When I learned about Chinese, which in fact is like at least 7 different dialects in Chinese that have nothing to do with each other, I realized that wow, you can even build a language that you don't have to have a verb for tomorrow to say two horses will come tomorrow. You know, because you can understand that if I say to you two horse, of course you understand there are two horses. You know, there are two of those things. You don't have to put a plural. You know, these kinds of things are nonsense, and that's just a little example how you can learn from other languages, look at other languages how they work, and you will realize that yours is full of bullshit, the same as theirs. You know, so that's
I think
the
that
point.
it's interesting too that some languages are really simple and some are quite complicated. Like Indonesian, for example, is very simple, but it's so simple that it's sometimes hard, like I don't speak Indonesian very well. I mean, I learned a little bit when I was there, but I have friends actually that learned Indonesian, Romanian actually for one thing, for example. Anyway, and he was saying that it's actually really hard to understand people because when you have this limited language and it's so simple, then you have to kind of interpret it more. Whereas, for example, Russian is quite detailed in like one word can be manipulated to to be a lot more detailed. Um,
That's
Yeah,
interesting
but
point, but I don't think it's. I think actually that a simple language is even better because even our languages that are so complex, you need so much context. Because if I say I'm going to take the car and go and buy a pizza, I used different kinds of verbs, but what I'm doing is so complex that I can never describe a language. Like if you compare the language that I describe here with my event, is completely like different. Like I have to walk, I have to open the car's door, I have to go there, I have to turn the car, and everything is about context. So even if you say simple, I car pizza now, it's still very easy to understand.
But I think it's more complicated when you get into more complicated subjects, rather than just getting talking about philosophy or I don't know. It's funny actually in Russian. There's like more than 10 ways to say "I go." There's not like just one word for it to go. You have to describe exactly how you're going, whether you're driving or you're walking or taking a plane. But anyway.
Like,
But every language has their problems, of course. I don't know.
okay, I think the connection dropped for me a little bit.
Yeah,
Can you
it
hear me
looks
now?
like everybody's rotating.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened.
Mm,
So there's no
Yeah,
stream?
I see everybody flashing on and off now.
Yeah.
well, I'll keep on talking then.
Yeah,
What I wanted to say is that saying an airplane flies or a bird flies, there are completely different kind of movements in the air, but we use the same verb, and the context takes care of completely everything.
But then
we will reach the context.
But then it looks like the more simple the language, the more context you have to understand. When one word could mean 10 things, you have to be into the same environment to understand what exactly the person mean. I mean, and opposite, when the language is more complex and detailed, you just have to know more words into this language, and then you will understand what the person wants to tell you. Did you get me?
Necessarily, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily true because even like I explained, even when you use this complex language and more detailed, it's still completely far off from whatever you are trying to describe. So in that sense, I don't think if you reduce it the language and make it like Chinese, for example, more simplified, I don't think it creates confusion. Like you can see Chinese or other languages that are easier to in text structure, they are still very complex in whatever they are trying to express.
Yeah, I find that in the future we will manage to make the person experience what we want to say or what we want to communicate. So maybe that it doesn't require like verbal or words. No, it will be more like images on. I think that Jack Fresco said once that. The more you think in terms of language, the more restrict your way of thinking or something like that. It makes me think a lot because, if we, but when we understand something, I mean, when we experience something and we connect associate the ideas, it's not, it's like, for example, when he talked about the how he explained to a person that believed in that the Earth was plane with a balloon and cornflakes to kind of simplify the magnetic effect and gravity. With the
You're talking about Jack Fresco.
Yes. So in that sense, he didn't use language, but by showing the phenomena, the other person could understand. So I think that maybe in the future when we try to inform about some phenomena, we kind of make experience the phenomena, sort of, or something like that,
Yeah, actually, that's exactly the conclusion of the book.
Great.
So thank you for making this shorter.
Sorry.
That's it. Bye, guys.
I will definitely read the book. I'm very, very interesting, but this is what, when I was reading it was like having the experience of my ideas being ordered, like being totally related to what you were writing. Maybe it's kind of egocentric saying this, but I have this feeling of okay, these are all the ideas I have in mind, but kind of structured and well explained. And wow, thank you. So I see how hard it has to be to manage all that process of getting information and connecting, and I'm really liking it. Yeah.
And imagine that I was wondering
And I'm
myself when I
learning a
was
lot of
writing
new
this book.
things also. I'm learning a lot of new things also. I mean, I haven't seen before how deafblind communicates with the hand, and it, I get touched by that.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that you have to explain language with language? This is very difficult. This is like
Yeah.
the brain looking at itself somehow, and it's very complicated. It's like trying to chew your own teeth. It's like it's
Yeah.
very complicated. Yeah. So
I think.
what? Mhm. Sure, sure.
So I was on Rafa's point. Kind of like it kind of reminded me of like language is like a limiting factor, and you can kind of think of like a word that you know what it means, but you're like almost incapable of explaining what it means, but you know how to use it in a sentence, kind of thing. And it's like trying to share that, like what made you make the information that made your brain make sense of that without the ability to kind of spit out what it actually, the definition might actually be. I guess you could use that like a technology like a Neuralink, where they're trying to basically upgrade. This falls under the human bandwidth, human communication bandwidth, and that very limited. Whereas a picture is worth 1,000 words, kind of thing. You can, and then you put a movie, sounds and moving picture together. It's like there is a lot more bandwidth, a lot more opportunity for information transmission, kind of thing, versus I'm just trying to we're in Jitsi right now, and we're just kind of talking about changing the entire world, kind of thing.
It's really complicated. So right now I'm writing a book about my travel stories and stuff like that, and it's so hard to think back at these moments and then try to put them into a language, into words that actually describe the experience that I experienced. And like sometimes I actually have to like close my eyes and like listen to the song that went on at that moment, or that was like representative of that time, and then look at a thesaurus and look at like a million words that I can use to just describe one sentence, and then change it one paragraph to I can spend like an hour on one paragraph.
Yep.
Just to try to describe that moment, and it's so hard.
Yeah, if someone punches me in the face, I would rather punch you in the face to show you exactly how that felt instead of explaining.
Yeah.
That really hurt
It's really hard to describe it. Yeah.
But then the question, how you describe it to the person who never experienced the hit in the face.
Yeah.
That was a very complex topic for you to, for example, approach in this book. It's very complex.
Would you hit this person if you ask how does it feel? What is it like?
Context, no? Or
Mm-hmm.
to refer about context. I understand that as previous experience, no?
I mean, you don't have to experience everything, like, would you guys wanted to experience, starvation or war or something like that? I mean, but we can understand what it feels like, at least approximately, by watching some documentaries, or, I don't know, hear some stories or reading books. So, yeah, I think both ways of communication, experience and transmission of the experience through the books or through the videos, is kind of different things, and it's not necessarily one have to replace another.
And it's a difference between, for example, if I punch someone in the face to show him how I felt, it's a way to translate that punch. You see, so that maybe it's better than explaining, but his interpretation is another thing. How you, because that's why you said. That's why you said
I'm
like.
doing your favor, man.
Because you said like, would you want to experience starvation, for example? well, that's not exactly the point, because it's like maybe it's easier to translate starvation by starving someone so that you can replicate the same event, but it's very different on how people um, take that in. Like maybe some will understand starvation more if they watch documentaries. Maybe some understand it more if you starve them, if they go through that kind of experience. You know what I mean? So it's a difference
Uh,
between trying to replicate something that you want to explain, and depends who is there in the other side and understands this explanation.
but then the question is, do you really need to experience everything?
But when I mean experience, I also mean, for example, that we can experience someone's experience with this capability of empathy, or by being uh, uh, exposed to an event, and where you can identify, for example, the pain in other, you can sort of experience that pain, because we are mainly emotional. We have evolved from those emotions, and then the brain has evolved with more complex structures that gave us the possibility of language, but we kind of transmit a lot of information with that emotion. So maybe when we can feel what others feel, in that sense, it's experiencing too. So maybe it has not to be a direct experience, but a more passive experience, sort of speaking. Like, for example, if I see someone who is getting burned, and I see how it screams and how painful it is, I don't need to experience that to know that fire is painful, So, but I've been exposed to that experience, not directly, but and because we have been just recently exposed to the scientific method, uh, when we until we can understand the reality in a more complex way, I find that language was a way to associate emotions, and that's why people get moved with when he or she reads something, and the way leaders could uh, uh, manipulate people because they couldn't contrast that information, or have means to see how this is true or objective or provable. They didn't have those tools until, I would say, 300 years ago or so, that it's more established, set the scientific method.
um, I wanted to like push a bit the forces part, because now we are getting closer to the end. If you talk about the context, but before context, I want to, because it's important. Like, why should we analyze language, especially for this project, because we want to change the world and so forth. And the first thing to understand is that, like, what forces are shaping language, and we explain a few things, but let me share with you some thoughts. Maybe let's see what Cody has to say about this, because he's with computers and stuff like that, and he likes it. And I look, what I discovered that really surprised me is that translations, doesn't matter what artificial intelligence we put in. From my perspective, after learning about language, it is always going to be completely a mess. Not completely, but we can never improve, for example, on translation and automatic translation from one language to another, because they are so complex and they are so completely based on the context, you know, that I know it's a video online with someone saying, Alexa, please call 911 or something like that. And Alexa said, Alexa is the artificial intelligence from Amazon. And Alexa said, okay, I put 911 on your shopping list, because they didn't have that in the context. They only was programmed to put things on the shopping list. And it is the same with any kind of translations. I don't think they can be good. Like, we can never expect in English and Rafa to understand in Spanish something to be translated so well, and back and forth, back and forth. only some kind of general notions and text.
Yes. Well, it's something I find very interesting because I do translate a lot of stuff, and I find that maybe it is from my point of view, it is something that will help me more to me than the to people that read the translation, because to having to create this process of, okay, let's see what you have in mind when he said this, and how I interpret this in a way that it correlates with the general context and people understand in a way that sounds like a Spanish speaks and stuff like that. It's very complex, but I kind of love and I agree totally that you will miss something. You will miss information, details. You will miss some of. You will get the general ideas if the translation is pretty accurate, and it is always better than other person looks the translation to proofread, because we can miss a lot of things as we are humans. But yes. If you translate, you how I don't know how to say, but you will miss some details and some stuff. So I always recommend that maybe learning a lot of languages is not affordable for people, but maybe learning one language is not a lot of time, and it will get you access to other information. You know, it's a lot of languages, and from my experience, I understand that it's so crazy, this language topic, because so many languages, so many dialects. But I kind of find very helpful to have known English, because it led me to be here, for example. And in that sense, I would love to speak Russian, because it's a very ancient culture to me, and you know, I would love to speak also in many different languages, in Japanese or Chinese or some Arabic language. I would like to, but it's just
Because you are saying that you are missing missing parts of the, like, there are many, and we discuss in the book, there are many, like, from YouTube channels to books to a lot of knowledge that is only in one language, and if you don't know that language, if it is not translated or is not translated properly, then you are missing out a lot of information. That's what you are saying.
And that's especially a problem with not so popular stuff or scientific stuff. You know, you can find pretty much all the popular movies on most of the popular languages, but if you want to find some cool book or documentary on another language which is not popular, no, there is no way. I mean, you have to do it on your own if you want to translate something.
32,000, just to insert this, 32,000 scientific papers published in Brazil every year that are not translated in any languages, just in Portuguese. So imagine that a year, 30,000.
So when you realize about that we are one species, and that we can kind of try to collaborate and create something together to, you know, join forces, you know, to see the huge mountain of shit that we've created with the languages and
and then again, if you're speaking not
it's
popular,
kind of discouraging for me, but
if you're speaking not popular language and you're releasing some important information or as studies or researches, you basically can be doomed, because nobody will find you, even though, you know, you might have found some really new inventions or find a cure from cancer or what's not.
You cannot be a scientist and not know English, by the way.
For sure.
Because you're fucked.
Yeah.
But it's not only in science, it's actually for many things. Let's say, I know, you know, a lot of artists and they experience the same problem. For example, if you're a singer You have to, if you want to, to go on tour internationally for some different countries, you have to sing in English. I mean, there's no way. And it's not your first language, so you already have disadvantage, because it's all, let's say, entertainment industry is about competing. And then right there, you're one step lower than all the others. So, yeah. It's just example with entertainment, and it's okay. It's not important. But when we speak about scientific, science and researches, yeah, somebody really can make new invention, and nobody will just understand what he written there. Nobody even find it.
And you'll be missing a lot of information that's out there as well.
I just wanted to add on Rafa's point, kind of like lost in translation stuff. And I'm always curious, like, if you kind of mastered two languages, how that kind of looks in your head comparatively. Like, oh, there's not a word for like this thing. How do I convey this idea, kind of thing. I think that kind of reminds me of like language being the limiting factor. It's like we're taking a very complex, time's a factor. All your experiences is a factor, and like everything that makes you. And it reminded me of Carl Sagan kind of saying, what you lose by bringing like when you draw a 3D object on a 2D piece of paper. So when you draw a cube on a 2D piece of paper, it's like you lose some information there. It's no longer a cube. And the same can be done for like the Tesseract into the 3D world. It's just not the same thing. And it's like your brain is at like this massively complex structure, and then it's like, all right, but we run it through this translator that's at like this level down here. And then it's like you just all that information is just grinded out and tossed out. It's like you can't get the emotion. Like Sasha was saying, like imagining the thing, like imagine she could just be like, this is what I was doing for that 3 minutes of time. And it's like, you can imagine it yourself. That's that there's some language.
Language is always limiting. It's always limiting because when you walk outside, you are not like, oh, look a building, look a car, look this, look that. It's not words. It's you getting in all of that. You could never translate that into words or any kind of language.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You'd almost, I would think like you'd process that. So like this neural link, that's kind of like what they're trying to like do this brain interface thing. It's like you would have to basically find out the encoding for like walking down the street and like seeing all the buildings and stuff, and then spit that out to another person with the same kind of translator to translate it back into, oh, I was walking down the street and I saw this cool stuff and I felt this way about it, and there was this smell and this guy over here, and like you don't have even time to mention everything. Like you compress stories and everything, and you lose so much. And your memory's not perfect. Like there's a lot of things going on that are just not happening when we talk to one another or try to write something to one another.
And sorry, I was just gonna say translation is so complicated too. I took a translation course once, and they teach you, so much different style and stuff. You can say the exact same thing, but in a different style, and basically you're still saying, I'm walking down the street, or I'm strolling down the street, or I'm whatever, and it will come out totally different. But since it's the translation, you expect it to be what the author has said. And for example, we had it was a Spanish to English translation course. So there was one book, Don Quixote, and there were two different translators. One was one was like a modern translation, and the other one was like more original. That was supposed to be like the original Spanish style, but it's totally it was like a completely different book, in the way that it was written. So,
Yeah.
How can you translate Jacques Fresco?
I get that risk. I know I get that risk, but for example, if I consider that I want to bring some message, I expect that not all the message will get to the people, but some ideas that will make trigger some questions or something like that. But
yeah, that's not only for translations, that's just for normal conversation as well.
Also, speaking the same language.
Yeah,
It's a difference. It's a massive difference between the written language and the spoken language. Like we say, "How are you?" and we write "How are you" in the same way that we say that dogs when they bark they say "woof woof." Is the relationship between the two? The same way that the woof woof doesn't describe at all how the dog barks. The same way "How are you doing" describes nothing like how we talk. It could be very difficult to understand this, but for example, if you ask people from many countries, how are dogs? What sound is the dog making? Some will say woof woof, some will say hum hum, some will say whatever.
Wow,
It's the
wow.
same sound. We hear the same sound. We write it very differently. You know what I'm saying? So the written text is completely different from how we talk right now. We couldn't get sentences out of how we talk here. Um, Commas at the end of the sentence makes no sense almost in talking language because you never stop. Bam. You always like put a comma, maybe not a like a
Yeah,
point,
because you
like
need to take
whatever.
care.
It's very different. So when we talk about, for example, translations, yes, text translations are much easier to translate from one language to another, but live conversations are a completely different thing because it's you stop, you have all kinds of gestures, your tone of the voice and so forth. It gets many times more complicated.
One idea that I like in the book is when you said that some animals are capable of feeling or being sensitive of the magnetic field, but despite we cannot feel it, we will understand much more than them about the magnetic field because of language, I guess. So in a sense, it kind limit us, but also expand us our understanding because we can understand things that we cannot feel because we can see it, we cannot feel it, but we can see the consequences of those phenomena in nature. When
Yeah,
you can
we
see,
still can
no?
we still can understand things that we have far surpassed our senses. In that sense, we
Exactly.
understand it very well. But it could be helpful, for example, if you sense the magnetic field, to use it for communication or to expand on other ideas. Use it like a tool.
Yeah.
So Theo, besides that we have a lot of different languages which create a lot of problems. Uh, why do not why, but I mean, do you think we need to improve the way we communicate? Yeah, you said about experience, about the context, but you also say our language we're using now, like all humans, are not effective, right?
Yeah, my argument was that languages today are way too complicated for the message that they project. Like instead of having verbs for all kinds of events and all kinds of times and so forth, you can compress this language. Like Chinese is compressed in many instances, and you can make a language that is. I mean, I was looking at TROM books, just to give you an example. I used around 1,000 unique words for all of the TROM books so far. Just 1,000 unique words. And they include the, a, even those kinds of and so forth. Just 1,000 words. Imagine that and I wrote a lot of books.
Can you give an example? What do you mean by uh, 1,000 invented words?
I didn't get that.
What do
Like a
you?
thousand. He means like a thousand different English words. Like the would be a word, and
Mhm,
as would be a word, and he could do
mhm.
all those books with 1,000 of
Ah,
English words.
okay. Thank
Yeah,
you for.
just 1,000 units. And if you look, for
Thank
example, at computers, they are the simplest in terms of language. They use 2 units, 0 and 1, on and off. And with that, we can talk right now with that. Imagine that. But for us, will be very hard because it will be like 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, and this means 11. So it's very
Yeah.
complicated. So I looked at languages, and some of the most you can look at them in units. Units are the alphabet. We have like 20, 30 in most alphabets,
Mm-hmm.
but there are languages who go as low as 6 or 7. Sol ra
Mm-hmm.
sol, for example, they use like do re mi fa sol la si. They use that, and they create words and they create sentences and probably you can create a language.
Okay,
The
but it's
simplest,
this language is so weird.
yeah,
Like,
well, the
I'm not
starting
sure everyone can communicate with that, or you can properly communicate with that. It's just like an
but
example, it works, but it's
but
not
there are
like the
languages that
full
are around
communication.
2000 11 units. Those are the lowest 11 units, and they are quite complex in
Yeah.
whatever they can conceive. So instead of using 30 units, use 11 units and cut the grammar like as much as possible. That will be one approach.
Okay, you give example as computers, yeah, they use only 2 digits, yeah, 1 and 0, and everything is created by that. I mean, we as a humans cannot adapt this system because our processing speed is not as fast as computers, so we need more letters. As you said, example, yeah, 11. Instead of telling 11, we have to to put maybe 20 digits, yeah, which represent the 11. So in this sense, we cannot simplify as much maybe as you want or as you propose the language because of our, let's say, biological capabilities or limitations.
But as I said, there are like we gave 2 lectures that are great lectures by a very well-known linguist, and he presents their languages that are 11 units long, and they are as complex as those who are 20 units longer and so forth. So it's based on that. That's where I got that information. So if they can with 11, maybe you can reduce it. It's half or more than half of what we have today.
So how would simplifying it make it more effective?
Yeah, I also wanted to ask that.
Several. So, for example, take let's start with something different. Take artificial intelligence and translation. It will be much easier instead of taking like 30 units and make you sentences with 30 units and words. If you take only 11 units, you will have less words to mingle with, less possibilities to. And I give detailed examples in the book, like how many words you can create with 11 units, how many with 20, and so forth. So from a perspective of computers, and that's very important because lots of research is done with computers, and we should rely on written text to let machines read and arrive at decisions. So
Yeah,
that's one.
it's only 2 letters, 2 numbers in this case, and see how complex things are with only two letters, 2 digital numbers.
Yeah, but
In that, yeah.
what about humans? I mean, maybe 11. Yeah, it's okay, but not two
Yeah,
digits.
I mean, if those people can survive with 11 letters and they do it pretty well and they invent all kinds of stuff,
No,
then
no, Tio, but how it's more effective for humans to use 11 letters instead of 30, let's say.
because you don't have to remember so many the complexity goes higher and higher. For example, in English, if you have so many letters, the way that you combine them and the relationship between them is mathematically a lot more complex, like many times more complex. That's the point here. And you have to remember all of that in terms of how you write, for example. You take your thoughts, you write in English, you have to remember a lot more rules than you have to remember if there were only 11 units. Understand?
I don't really see how it's more helpful or efficient in a way that we talk. I think it's kind of the same. For computers, your example, yes, I agree, but on a speaking level, among humans, I don't think much difference. Of course, there we could go in extremes with grammar and the rules, yeah, that's for sure. But we can use the same simple language using 30 letters, not necessarily reducing to 11. I just don't see how it's more effective for humans to use less letters.
Because if you have 32 letters, for example, or 30 letters, the relationship between them, it's a lot higher. It's mathematically a lot higher than the relationship between 11 letters. So you will have way more errors. You will have way more grammatical rules emerging out of this. So it's bad in both senses, but it's less worse when you have less units. That's the point here.
So it's not like the ultimate solution. It's just better than what we got, kind of thing.
Simpler.
Yeah.
So, but you advocate for a common language like Esperanto or something like that? Do you think that we should try to find an international way of
so many people emailed me about Esperanto. Esperanto is it's as crap as English is. It's the same kind of language, only that they try to make it international, you know. So in my view, I don't think you can make it very easy to transition at all from so many languages to one. For me, it's more important if the context is the same for everyone. Like if you are scientifically minded, you can be scientifically minded in Japanese or Russian or Spanish and so forth, and we can arrive and communicate through translations and arrive at the same decisions rather than look at America, the US. They speak 300 million people. They speak the same language, and they like fight with each other over so many ideas. So it's not like language allows us to be more like-minded. It's about the scientific mindset that allows us. Doesn't matter in what languages. Yes, it will improve that if you have the same kind of language, at least similar, because there will always be dialects, but at least if they are quite similar.
Okay, so what about mathematics? It doesn't have any dialects, right? It's widely accepted all around the world. At least I'm not aware if there are like different kind of mathematics. Like I didn't know that sign language they have like 150 or how many different sign languages. I was always sure it's just one and only international. Yeah.
What can
So
you repeat that, sorry?
so how it works? How it works for mathematics then?
Mathematics, it's a completely different story because mathematics doesn't deal with our day-to-day life. That's why our language is regrettable. Mathematics deals with real scientific measurements. That's why you can use whatever numbers you want or whatever letters or whatever. It derives from them.
But again, you can interpret it for you know from your own perspective, for make your own rules for some different countries, you know.
Yeah, you can do that if you apply it for the day-to-day language, but science won't recognize it.
But
Say this is not mathematics.
But people don't do this.
I mean, mathematics has to have some kind of correlation with nature in a sense of it's like codifying in a way some I don't know, some process of nature, for example, matter moving, no? And you can see different objects and how do you manage those
But that's
to count or some.
But that's exactly where all the language started. It was correlation of the entire world. It's the way to describe things, the way to explain things, and the first language.
Because that word is subjective, then the language becomes subjective. If you look at mathematics, take for example all kinds of measurements that are not well defined in science, like dark energy, dark matter, or the constant expansion of the universe. People may disagree on that even if they use the same mathematics. They will say, no, the constant speed is this. Some will say, no, the constant speed is that, because they don't agree on the physical reference.
Exactly. Great point.
So, if I remember correctly, Jacques Fresco was referring to more scientific language and to come more to the society when our words, and he even proposed like instead of names we can use some kind of code, so people people call your name and he already have some kind of information. Okay, you like music or you like travel or whatever, just from your name.
And what do you think, Paul? What do you think?
No, I think it's not gonna really work because people are so different. There are so many different things and contexts and interpretations from persons. I don't really see how scientific method can be applied to day-to-day, talking.
He was saying that there was going to be like language kind of split into two, right? That there would be like the scientific kind of area and like universal, kind of like mathematics and physics. These are just like accepted universal things, and then the like romantic, how we kind of speak to each other through poems or whatever, that kind of thing. Having it complete.
I think it was more him saying that language needs to be based on a physical reference, so rather than the poetry and the interpretable.
Yeah, but can we effectively communicate always to have some kind of reference, physical reference?
Well, that's the problem that I think Theo is talking about with the context, because the physical referent might be different, interpreted differently
Yeah.
according to people's backgrounds. According
Yes.
to how they grew up, whatever you're telling them will mean something different. So yeah, it's complex.
Mm.
I see languages like day-to-day one and the research language. The day-to-day language will always be subject to interpretation. Doesn't matter what you put there, how you put the words. If I know that TVP, for example, in Jack Fresco projected this, and I disagree that projected this idea of instead of saying, "Ah, Rafa, you are so annoying," I could say, "Rafa, I think you are so annoying," and they gave such
Or you
examples.
are so annoying to me.
Or yeah,
Yeah.
or you are so annoying to me, or something like
I
that.
use
Or no,
that a lot.
let me correct that. You are so kind to me, or you are so nice to me.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And I don't think that is going to improve communication pretty much at all. I think that is just a little hack here and there, but it matters completely on the context. Like, go and say that to someone who's pissed off, or go to say that to some people that I know. They will never listen to you. These are small hacks that will never improve the language. I'm sure after I wrote this book, and I've seen so many examples of there are languages who are so specific about certain things, like when you say something, you will say, like, you cannot say a tree fell down in the forest. You should say, if you heard that, saw that, if someone told you that. There are languages like that, but they don't make them more honest. You know what I mean? If they put more stuff into it, like I say, you are like that to me, it doesn't make me more honest. It doesn't make you more receptive to my message. And there are so many examples of such languages that prove without a doubt that if you change the language, you don't change the context, basically. You have to change the context. You can keep the same language. And I don't talk like that, like Jack Fresco says, but I can get along with people pretty well, with the same kind of languages, share the same context. It could
Yeah.
be very difficult to explain now.
I think what can improve communication is understanding that, having that understanding that the person that you're talking to has a different background. Because of that, they might not interpret what you're saying exactly how you want them to. Keeping that in mind, I think that can improve communication quite a lot, because that way, at least you understand. You can try to understand people, and you can try to at least use certain words that might make them understand yourself according to their background. Does that make sense?
So in order to use this physical referent for our day-to-day language, we have to be all the same in a way. Yeah, we have to all came up from the same background.
Yeah.
Then it might work.
Yeah, and this thing that
If
the
not
language
the
that I use,
same, at least some common background, no? Meaning that understanding how nature works for real, and that will bring us a different preparation for communicate between us. I understand that in that sense.
we have the perfect example here. All of you are from different countries. You speak different kinds of languages with different kinds of rules. Yet we get all together and we don't use a special kind of grammatics. We just talk. But even if we don't talk, if you talk, we speak a broken English, we get along very well. But I know so many people who speak Romanian, my natural language, my first language, and I don't get along with them at all. That's
Yeah,
why the context matters.
yeah, exactly. You don't share the context with them or your interest and point of view of different. That's interesting topic. That's how you can find communication from people all around the world speaking different languages just because you have the same kind of values and interests. And yeah, I think that's all you called by the word context.
It's
Yeah,
actually
I think,
also
yeah.
I also think that saying at the end or beginning of the word to me, or in my opinion, it's also a way for that it's not a general solution, but it could be useful in some instances where you don't want to or people can how do you say react to this kind of God attitude and in a sense of knowing all the answers. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when we make some claims, and if we cannot have the time or expressing how we end to that conclusion, or what information or experiments have we taken into account, it it depends on the background of the other person. Can feel like, I don't relate in his message. So I find that language is a tool that you can use so to adapt to the people's, if you know that person, to the people's context, for sort of speaking.
The way that
So in
I
that,
put it visually was to imagine like tea bags, and tea bags have different kinds of flavors,
be
and
water, my friend.
you can put tea bags in the water, and they will have different kinds of taste depending on the tea bag. The tea bag are the words, okay? The substance, the glass of water it's your brain. So you can take the same tea bag, like a word, say trade, okay? And you can put it in different kinds of solutions, but the solutions are the people's brain. If you put it in water, if this has
Yeah.
the flavor of orange, it will taste one way. If you put it in milk, it will taste another way. That's why when you project words to people, they take these tea bags and put them in their heads, and they will taste depending on their background, depending on their experiences. So when I say, for example, in my view, trade is the source of all problems, instead of saying trade is the source of all problems, if I say in my view, some people will think, okay, that's a great way to say it because it's scientific. Some people will say this is a weak way of saying it because
Yes, exactly.
it means that you are not so sure. It's interpretable even if you use these kind of tricks.
Yes, I agree.
That's a really good way of putting it. It's too bad.
That was the
Yes,
analogy in the book.
in general semantics, I think they use the a similar analogy, saying that words are containers and people are the ones who put the meaning in the words. So, like, words are empty and the people are the ones who fill the words with meaning. So, but I really like that analogy with Tiba, because I understand that the word, or the meaning of the word, will depend on what mind do you put that word, and the mind being the liquid. So I really get the idea with that analogy. I really like that.
Because one, okay, Sasha, say, because I talked a
No,
lot.
I was gonna say, well, that's our next problem because most people cups are filled with nonsense and consumerism. So whatever tea bag you put in their cup, spit it out.
Yeah, and companies are throwing tea bags at people because they want to sell views
Yeah,
and to
and then it's all these cups
head
are just
full of
shit.
a big tea.
That's our problem. So so the solution is really education.
That's my conclusion, because when I started the book, I was thinking that maybe the solution is a lot of it is in part of language, how to change language. And I went down that path and I said, look, we can change language, like I explained to you, with less units, for example. But in fact, the real solution here, it's education. The more scientifically minded you are, doesn't matter if you speak Catalan or Castellan or whatever dialects in this world, you are going to get along. That's good.
Was a joke.
Yeah, it's everything about education. The same way you, Sasha, just pointed out that people, it's not, the language problem is the problem. That the people have got some crap in their heads, but where it gets from the same language, from the same information and culture and background. And like as an alternative thinking person, you can educate yourself and people around, but all the system is based so that people are, because when you're born, you're basically empty. Your cup of tea is completely empty, and all the environments start to put the crap into your
And
head.
then people shit in it.
Yeah.
And your parents are like, feel it, feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As seen on TV. Yeah.
I wanted to say something, but I
I
forgot.
like that approach of being
No.
empty born. Yeah, I still
And
understand.
to me, in the book, to put it very simply in a context, I said, for example, if I tell to you guys I'm going to have a sandwich, what do you imagine? Because you probably imagine like I'm going to walk into the kitchen and make a sandwich with bread and whatever some things that we imagine, like ham. But why didn't you imagine that I'm crawling on my bell like that, go to the kitchen and put like two sandals and something like that? Because it's because of the context. You are used to such things. You are used to sandwiches. You are used to going to the kitchen and eating. And that's why in the book I argue that no alien species could ever understand us. I think that that's quite true. Like no one can understand us. If you send Wikipedia to any alien species, they will be like, okay, tree. What is a tree? They will get a definition, but they will have no reference. They will take all of the words from definition and they will go from definition to definition to definition. They will have nothing to imagine what a tree is. You can say it is brown. What the fuck is brown? Oh, it's color. What is color? And so forth. You cannot explain that to them. That's why it's so tricky even when they meet remote tribes. I've seen examples of that. How do you communicate with them if they speak a language that has nothing to do with their language? You use physical references. You show them a tree and you say tree. You show it a dog, say dog. You see? That's why it's always about physical.
You need some physical reference at least,
Yeah, physical context in a sense.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting too. I mean, because you have to, when you go to that tribe, you then understand that, like, it makes you understand that, that their understanding is very different from yours. So once you have that understanding, because I've been to like some tribes, for example, and it's when you talk to the people there, you understand that you can only talk about certain things. Oh yeah, Makan, I like eating. Yeah, I eat rice. It's like it really you understand the limitations. Whereas us talking to each other, like me talking to other Russian people here, we don't think about our limitations, even though we have a lot of limitations. People will have a hard time understanding me, especially in this village. But we don't think about it because we share the same language. But yeah, it all has to do with that.
Like the Rosetta Stone is the perfect example of they found a stone with a language that they had no idea what the language it is, and they had absolutely no way to decipher that language. And then they found this Rosetta Stone. Basically, that's the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was they had a sentence basically in that weird language and another sentence in Old Greek or something, and they could associate the words. But if you don't have any physical reference, even if you are talking about humans, if you discover a language that was old and ancient and had no physical reference to it, you have no idea what those words stand for. There is nothing doggish about the dog, the word dog, and so forth. This is very interesting.
Yeah, have you seen that science fiction film about those aliens that come to Earth and scientific person is sent to kind of try to establish
Arrival?
communication? I don't know the
Something like Arrival?
Arrival, yes.
Okay, because
exactly.
people forced me to see that movie, and I was almost like poking my eyes.
Poking
I don't
your
think
eyes, what the meaning of?
I was like taking my hair, like, what the fuck are you doing here? It's like stupid. It's stupid. This was stupid. Like, man, I even read articles about like debunking that like craziness about around that kind of idea. That idea was
What
like
was it?
was like
What was
a
the
movie,
idea?
and the idea was like the words in a sense influence the way that you think, and the way it was like you encounter an alien species and then
Yeah, the point.
scientists
Sorry,
come
sorry.
there to talk to them.
The point that I wanted to make, and it's a short one, and then you can explain about the film, is that how she had a hard time to say how could I start, because I have, they were really limited. They were they can interact in a room that is separated by a glass, and everything is white and empty. There was nothing. So it was like, how can I start if I have no something of physical reference? So That's the
And
point that I wanted to make.
you know where they got that wrong, where because they said we have those aliens here and we want to talk to them, and they bring on linguists. You don't bring on linguists, you bring on biologists, because you have to understand that creature, the
Exactly.
physical reference for that creature. Maybe it's deaf, maybe it's blind, maybe it's like, this is crazy, you know.
Yeah. But it was the idea about of the if you don't have something, no, like when you like you say, no, you point at something. This is a tree, this is a dog, and you
Mhm.
try to associate.
Yeah,
Yeah, this.
that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
And maybe the last point that I wanted to make about aliens, I got to realize that, like, imagine mathematics and physics, okay? And they say they are universal languages. And maybe because they send into space like the Voyager with the disk, and they put there some scientific, like mathematical, physical references. I don't think that's true. I think mathematics is just one way to describe the reality and manipulate it. Like, imagine computers who have different kind of programming languages, say Python and PHP. Okay, two, they are very separate. A programmer who learns PHP doesn't know Python, and the other way around. Okay, both programming languages can make the computer like open the CD-ROM, do this, do that. Imagine the computer is the universe. Okay, you have two separate languages that are very scientific, and they can manipulate this universe. Okay, maybe it's the same way with mathematics and all the science. We have this mathematics and science. We know how to build rockets. We know how to do stuff, but maybe it's a completely different kind of scientific language out there that we have absolutely no idea, and it works in the same way, and they are not connected with each other. So that is very interesting if you think about it. Okay. Okay, so it was a question from Johan. What about language influencing the way that we see the world? And I think we can't address that. It's, to say it in one word, is bullshit, because they did all kinds of experiments. There are some people in some tribes, they don't use left or right, front or back. They use east, west, north, south. Okay, and they compare those kind of people from those culture to people from our culture, and they didn't notice any real difference. Like they have better orientation into space, and there are many kinds of experiments like that. So no, it doesn't influence the way that you think. It's like that, those tea bags depends what you have inside your brain, you see. Because maybe the same words that I get to hear today, I've heard when I was 13, may no impact on me when I was 13. Maybe now they have a huge impact.
Yeah, from what I understand in that sense, I mean, when you ask if language affects the way we think, you expose that it's not language, meaning that it has no real impact in how we see the world, and because at you know how do you say sorry, because I have English troubles. At the end, you have to need to have the experience, meaning the experience or the context, no, or it was something like that what you were referring, right?
Words themselves do not have an impact. Words in the solution, they have the impact depending on the solution. That's my
I
point.
mean, exactly. See, I mean, you cannot relate to some words if you haven't learned them, or in what's the meaning, or what's the in what context is used. So so ultimately, what would you say? It's the the experience of the person in relation to that context and the specific message that is being sent in, you know what I'm talking.
The only way that I can explain it is that thing with the tea bags. Like, words themselves do not have an influence unless you dissolve them into a substance, and the substance is what matters. What matters, you see? That's my
Yeah,
Yeah, and the thing
exactly.
is with just quickly with the learning another language aspect, it's not the language itself that brings something to you. It's the people that you become exposed to. If I learn Spanish, then I can speak to all sorts of people that don't know English already, and those people will change me because if they think differently because of their different environment. So it's not the
Exactly.
language itself, but who's behind that language, what experiences you can gain from learning that language. So the
Yeah.
concept again.
So I wanted to add in that sense that when Theo said that language is like an attempt of mapping the world, I also recall that popular sentence of general semantics too. That then it went to the more pseudo scientific um, NLP. I think it are the acronyms, and the map is not the territory. So what you mean is that you create the map, but the map is not that territory. So you have the world, but the world is not the thing. And
It's
in
always
that
like
sense, you have the tea bag, but the tea bag is not the content. It will depend on how will relates with the mind of that person, and that mind is created because of the background, experience, culture, different languages, and yeah. So finally, I would say that I arrived to the same conclusion that it's not language what make us see different the world.
yeah, the map there is never the territory. You can never define the world. You can never define the world with words. Even mathematics, it's you only describe some parts of the words, and then you connect them for your own purpose to build buildings and shoot rockets into the other people sometimes.
And even creating a map is a very hard work because you have to take into account many different things. But at the end, it's just an approximation or an abstraction of the reality.
So what's the conclusion here? If we were to conclude, for example, let's start with Cody. Let's hear
Oh, jeez.
about language. What's the conclusion here in a few sentences?
Language is shit.
The conclusion, I guess, is that it's very limited in our ability to share experiences fully. That we kind of have to pick and choose, important things, like the verb you use, you're not crawling into the kitchen or whatever. Yes, context, relevance. So like, there's something like exclusive to somebody's culture. Like we have poutine over here, and it's like you guys don't know what poutine is, and I'm like, oh, it's so great and fantastic, and everything. You have no idea what I'm talking
about. That's my president.
Yeah,
Isn't
exactly.
that great?
But yeah, exactly. So yeah, there needs to be a common ground. We have limited bandwidth, and I guess the solution isn't even that. I don't think the solution looks like we have like a ultimate solution to our kind of language is gonna head, just kind of like a better direction to kind of push it right now. If I was going to think of a solution, I'd say it would come out of something technological, like this neural link thing. That's basically, if you think a computer is converting binary zeros and ones into something we can read and interact with, and then it's translated back. The same thing that this neural link could encode, our thoughts. It's like, hey, I would like to, just think the thing that I want to send over to Sasha or Tio or whatever. It's converted into and represented by, whatever language they want to use for this neural link, and then reassembled on your end so that you're able to re-experience. Although I guess almost that doesn't work then, because you don't have all their experiences. I
think a really an interesting point, actually. I mean, really like the cup analogy, and I think it's important what Dima said too, that voice represents you, right? The more you wrote, the more basically people put it. That works.
And I think the Jitsy's just give it a second.
Yeah.
Or
can you try to repeat it again, Sasha? What you just said?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
So I think it's important to take into account the cup analogy, and then what Dima said, that the cup is basically empty when you're born. once the more you grow, the more shit people fill it up with. So basically, and then once it's really full, then it's almost impossible to make that substance, be able to take the tea bag that you want them to interpret, the way that you want them to understand what you're saying. So I think it's important to actually go after to go after young people whose cups aren't completely filled with shit.
But this shit becomes more aggressive and annoying also for the young persons.
Yeah. But
yeah, but I agree with you, Sasha.
yeah, so the important thing is again education.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand too that education is not just school. Education is everything around you. It's your entire
Yes, and
especially not school, actually.
Especially
I would
not.
say
Yeah.
that education means also creating different contexts, because if context is, as explained in this book, is almost everything that gives us the base for communicating, then we need to, instead of working on a language, then working on I would say, like, context is, like, in this case, a synonym of environment, meaning what makes people react to so in that sense, I kind of fall into the Venus project, saying about creating environments where enables a different way of behaving and communicating. Because the other day I was having a talk with someone that he says that we don't need to educate, we need to create the technology. Like, for example, saying that, but it's interpretable in that way. I mean, I don't need to understand internet, but I know how to use it. So in that, but I need that technology, and that technology is built to a definite purpose, which is exchanging information, from what I understand. So even if we don't want that people understand everything that they are going to use in the future, we need to educate in how and what we want to see in people behavior. So it's I maybe I haven't said nothing, but it's a very complex topic. It's a very complex topic. Yeah.
What about you, Dima?
Sorry?
What about you?
I'll give you some experience.
And what is your caption?
I think the more open-minded person, the easier communication with him, and you can become open-minded only by educating. I would conclude like that.
And I would say that language will never define reality, because reality is too complex for that. And I think we better have 7 billion people who speak 5,000 languages but are scientifically minded, rather than 5 billion people who speak the same language but have all kinds of shit in their heads. So I think that will push us to a saner society, regardless of language. And if we were to at one point improve language, I still keep my theory of like reducing the language to have less rules, and then make it more universal, make it use even hands or colors or something like that, to go beyond just writing. We can express through videos, we can express through visual representations and so forth. That's my conclusion. And please read the book, because you need the context. It's a huge book. It's 600 pages long, but it's very interesting. To me, it was like mind-opening to see how other people communicate. Like, just to throw something here, some girls three girls born without sight and without hearing. Imagine, how do you communicate with those people? how do you communicate with those people? I'm not going to tell you. Just read the book. It's free.
Yes, I strongly recommend to read the book. I have to finish, and I will. Yes.
Okay.
I really like that
I
that
haven't
final
started
point
yet,
you
so-
said
Me neither.
about the 5,000 languages but scientific mind, or one language but 1,000 different set of minds. So it's a great point to me. To me, I don't know if I use it or not. Okay.
Okay, and if we have like maybe we don't have the time to do the, we have some news that you can read in the maybe description if you don't have the time to just go through them. It depends on you, Dima. Whatever you want.
I think we can finish for tonight, and we will have next week second part of this talk, right?
Yeah, but I think we went through a lot of the book actually. So I'm not sure if we need a new stream for the same topic. But we'll see.
Is
Okay.
there anything else? Well, if we don't do another stream on this topic, is there anything else you'd like to add from your book?
That's the thing, because I don't know, because we covered some stuff, but the important part was the context, was everything, the language stuff, everything about the context, and I think we made that case, because that was the conclusion of the book, you know. So I think we can leave it like that because we have a book, so people can actually read the book if they want more context. And maybe we cannot. Maybe do you want to go to the news, or maybe we should people should read the news if they want.
I'm sure we could do it real quick, but I mean, if you guys have to go or anything, then
I don't. I can stay like 10 more minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say goodbye for today.
Okay, Rafa.
So
Okay,
I see
Rafa.
you guys next time.
So,
It's a totally
You bet.
pleasure.
Okay, Rafa.
Hey, Rafa.
yeah.
See you, Rafa.
Thank you.
Okay, so you can run quickly through the news.
So Cody, if you ever want to present anyone.
Sure. Yeah, I had a couple of so I guess we start off with the world faces the catastrophic risks over insects, and yeah, that's a huge thing, is that people being so disconnected from like the food chain, and it's like, it's like I eat a cow, this doesn't affect me at all, and it's like there's a chain, there's like the food web. You learned about that in school, like that's something useful. It's like these smaller things feed the bigger things. And if there's no bigger things like our megafauna, that's our primary source right now. I mean, some people are eating insects and stuff, and it's definitely like a better way to go. But with all the glyphosate, I think is pretty much what they're saying is pretty much killing off the bees and stuff and causing colony collapse. So, and just people not realizing, like, it's like we don't have bees, we don't have pollination. And it's like instead we want to create like a tiny little drone that's going to go and like be like a bee. It's like, how about we just change the environment so that the bees can just keep doing the bee thing?
Very good point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's one problem with our society, is the disconnection and understanding of our ecosystem.
Yep. Yeah, that, I guess that falls under education for people, just not realizing how scary this is to like know about it for years, and it's like
Yeah, I've heard of like, I think 10, even 12-year-old kids that didn't realize that the meat that they were being fed came from an animal. Like the steak comes from a cow.
Yeah, of course.
We're just
I mean, that's in the next level of disconnection.
Yep.
Okay.
When you eat at McDonald's, of course you don't. You only see the sandwich there.
Yeah. There's not the factory farm
and I think like
most people. I mean, most people are also moving into city, and actually, I don't know how much of the population lives in cities now. And I feel like in cities, people completely disconnect from nature, from having an understanding of nature, that we're part of nature. We can't live without it. They just don't see the processes. The food shows up in the shops. Their rubbish is taken away every night. They don't think about where it goes or how it's affecting our environment. And it's so easy not to think about that because you're so busy trying to work to
Disconnected.
make a living and
Yes.
to survive, yeah, and whatever else you have going on in the city.
Because we have another news that addresses this kind of like is the Green New Deal sustainable? It talks about all kinds of several issues in terms of alternatives to foods. So you can read about that. There is like all kinds of so-called fake meats and so forth that are way more sustainable. Not sure in this society, in this system, if they will be so sustainable, but
If it's
from
if it's profitable, it will be sustainable.
in that
And then
sense,
it
yeah.
won't.
Yeah, in that sense, yeah.
That's how
Okay.
our site operates.
And if you want, Cody, do you want anyone to?
Yeah, this is this is the weighty about the detox diets. They actually did these studies at the university in London here, so that's kind of funny. And that actually specifically in my province, Ontario, that you need. I'm a nutritionist. I can call myself a nutritionist, and it's like nowhere else is like that. And I guess they're saying like basically I can just put out, yeah, I'm a nutritionist, and this lemon diet worked out for me, or keto, or whatever. Atkins was a popular one back then. I guess these are more referring to the detox, and it's like I remember hearing and seeing this stuff on commercials, late night stuff. It's like, oh man, all those toxins in my body, I wish I had them out. And it's like, wait, what
Do
is
you
a
have kidneys?
toxin? What
Do
is
you
a
have kidneys?
toxin? Yes, and it's like, yeah, it's already being removed, and like learning that like these colon cleanses and stuff are actually harmful to you. It's like your body's very good at like what it's doing and how it's processing all these things, and just this junk detox, just drink this for like 3 days straight, this green drink or whatever, and then people are like, oh yeah, I feel great,
Yeah.
or whatever.
And then I can go and eat more shit from McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it'll all come out. It's a funny thing too when you think about like how much people spend on food and how much they spend on weight loss. Like
Yeah.
I've
yeah.
seen that the recent studies. It's interesting. The recent studies show that exercise will not help you lose weight. Like I didn't know that, but you can exercise as much as you want. You will lose very little weight. And people, it's a huge industry. Of course, the industry will not like this idea. If you want to lose weight, just don't eat that much. But exercise, I had no idea. Exercise, you can do as much as you want. You will not lose much weight at all. So that was one thing that came to my mind now. Okay, we have some news about citizen scientists and some projects that everyone can participate. I think that's interesting. And along that news, we have a news from PBS about opinion. Every student can be an inventor, and of course, like how today's schools are pushing kids into being so mechanical and not creating inventors out of them. They remove curiosity, and we all know that. Okay, we have another project by citizen scientists who are helping to do a survey about plastic pollution on beaches, and they go and many of them, hundreds, I think, or thousands. It's interesting from two perspectives. One, because they do this and try to do a survey of plastics on the environment, and second, that they do it for free as volunteers, like trade free thing. So you have to learn from this. It's an interesting idea to do such things. And a few more news. Another news about pirate websites being blocked around the world, because that's the theme here on the internet. Everyone blocks websites for all kinds of reasons. We are used to this shit already. Even Google, in another news, is removing search results from Russia, because Russia is like, I'm going to ban everything, because that's how Russia is. And Google is like, okay, boss, we have a business here. We have to comply with you, which is, you see, shitty. Okay. And just one more, because the one about 5G, I'm not going to read. It's about Netflix. Netflix, I told you in the book, I wrote in the last book that Netflix is like a prostitute, like every kind of company. And they're going to put on Netflix any kind of shit that is going to make them money. And now they're making a series about this, I think it's an actress or something that is very popular. And she sells a lot of crap. She's like all kinds of pseudoscience bullshit. And they're making a series about her just to show you that money talks, another example.
Yeah.
Basically.
No, it's nothing new. It's not really a news.
Is the news, but not the news.
Yeah.
Every week the same. Every week the same.
That's it.
Okay, guys.
So,
Thank you for the stream. I'm gonna stop now.
okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
See you, everyone.
And I've stopped recording.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
It's so